The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and memories as Haerin stood outside the small cafe in Hongdae. 10 years had passed, but the vintage sign still hung crooked above the entrance, its neon letters flickering in the same irregular pattern. This was where everything began with Donghyun, and now, at 32, Haerin found herself drawn back to this place. And if you want a handsome CEO in your life and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The cafe's interior remained unchanged. Wooden tables with minor scratches, mismatched chairs, and the constant hum of the espresso machine. Haerin's fingers traced the edge of Table 7, where she first met Donghyun during her university days. She had been struggling with her marketing assignment, papers scattered across the table, when he approached with 2 cups of Americano. Their first conversation lasted 5 hours. Donghyun, then a business student with ambitious dreams, spoke about revolutionizing the tech industry while Haerin shared her aspirations in advertising. Their connection was immediate, built on shared dreams and complementary personalities. The memory of their first kiss, right outside the cafe under the spring cherry blossoms, still felt vivid, his hesitation, her nervous laughter, and the way time seemed to stop when their lips finally met. But memories had a way of selective retention. As Haerin sat at Table 7, other images surfaced, less pleasant ones. The day everything fell apart played out like a cruel movie in her mind. It was during their final year of university when Minji, their ambitious classmate, entered the picture. Minji possessed everything Haerin lacked: family connections, confidence that bordered on arrogance, and a ruthless determination to succeed. The competition for the prestigious internship at Seoul's top advertising agency became the catalyst for their downfall. Minji, recognizing Donghyun's potential, made it her mission to work closely with him on projects. At first, Haerin trusted their relationship enough to ignore the late-night study sessions and frequent project meetings. But slowly, the distance between her and Donghyun grew. The final blow came when Minji secured both the internship and Donghyun's attention. The confrontation in the university courtyard still echoed in Haerin's mind. The accusations, the tears, and Donghyun's silence that spoke louder than any words could. He chose his career ambitions over their relationship, leaving Haerin to piece herself back together. Present-day Haerin checked her watch. Nearly time for dinner with Jisung. Her current life painted a different picture: a successful career in advertising, a comfortable marriage to a caring CEO, and a stability she once craved. Jisung represented everything that was right and sensible. He was attentive, successful, and genuinely loved her. The restaurant Jisung chose for dinner exemplified his taste: modern, elegant, with a view overlooking Seoul's skyline. He had arranged everything perfectly: her favorite wine, a carefully curated menu, and even the soft jazz playing in the background. Yet as Jisung enthusiastically discussed their upcoming vacation plans, Haerin's mind wandered back to the humble cafe in Hongdae. "Is everything all right?" Jisung's question pulled her back to the present. "You seem distant tonight." Haerin managed a smile, one she had perfected over years of corporate meetings. "Just tired from work," she replied, taking a sip of wine. "The new campaign is demanding." Jisung reached across the table, his hand warm against hers. "You're working too hard. Maybe we should move up our vacation plans." His concern was genuine, making Haerin feel guilty about her distracted state. She studied his face, handsome, kind, and worry lines forming around his eyes. Jisung had never given her a reason to doubt their marriage. He supported her career, respect, ed her independence, and created a life most would envy. Yet sitting there, surrounded by luxury and comfort, Haerin couldn't shake off the lingering thoughts of a cramped cafe, mismatched chairs, and conversations that lasted until dawn. The contrast between her past and present felt sharper than ever, like 2 photographs placed side by side, one vibrant but worn, the other polished but somehow lacking the same warmth. As the evening progressed, Jisung shared his plans for expanding his company, his enthusiasm evident in every word. Haerin nodded at appropriate moments, asked the right questions, but part of her remained in that cafe, wondering about paths not taken and choices that shaped her present reality. Jisung noticed the changes in Haerin's behavior gradually, like watching shadows lengthen across a wall. Her responses became delayed, her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes, and she spent more time staring at her phone without actually using it. As CEO of a major tech company, Jisung had built his career on reading people, but his wife had become increasingly difficult to understand. One morning, as they shared breakfast in their modern apartment overlooking Gangnam, Jisung decided to address the elephant in the room. "You've been different lately," he said, placing his coffee cup down carefully. "Is there something we should talk about?" Haerin's hand paused midway, through stirring her tea. "Different how?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Distant. Preoccupied." Jisung leaned forward, his business suit impeccable even at this early hour. "I know the advertising industry can be demanding, but this feels like something else." Hairin avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the steam rising from her cup. "I'm fine," she insisted, using the same tone she employed during difficult client meetings. "Just processing some new projects." The conversation might have ended there, if not for the business event that evening. The Seoul Technology Summit brought together the city's most influential tech companies, and as CEO, Jisung's presence was mandatory. Hairin, representing her advertising agency, accompanied him as both wife and industry professional. The event space sprawled across the top floor of a luxury hotel, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Executives in designer suits mingled with creative directors in smart casual wear, all engaged in the careful dance of networking. Jisung moved through the crowd with practiced ease, Hairin by his side, when the announcement of a new attendee sent ripples through the gathering. Dong Hyun had returned to Seoul. No longer the ambitious university student, he now commanded attention as the founder of a successful AI startup in Silicon Valley. His entrance caused subtle shifts in the room's dynamics. Executives adjusted their positions to appear more noticeable, while others whispered behind their wine glasses. Hairin's grip on her champagne flute tightened imperceptibly. Dong Hyun had changed, his shoulders broader, his posture more confident, but his smile remained the same. That half-smirk that always made her feel like they shared a private joke. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, the ambient noise faded away. Dong Hyun's expression shifted from professional to something more personal, more raw. He started moving toward them, navigating through the crowd with purpose. Jisung, ever observant, noticed the change in his wife's breathing pattern. He placed a protective hand on her lower back, a gesture both comforting and possessive. "Hairin," Dong Hyun's voice carried the weight of unspoken history. "It's been a long time." The tension crackled between them like static electricity. Hairin's professional smile wavered slightly. "Welcome back to Seoul, Dong Hyun SSI. I hear Silicon Valley has been treating you well." Their exchange of pleasantries felt like a poorly rehearsed play, each word carefully chosen to maintain the facade of casual acquaintance. But their body language told a different story, the way they unconsciously mirrored each other's movements, the careful maintenance of physical distance, the lingering eye contact that spoke of shared memories. Jisung watched this interaction with growing unease. As someone who built his empire on understanding market dynamics, he recognized the signs of underlying currents, of stories left unfinished. He tightened his grip on Hairin's waist slightly, drawing her closer. "Your AI development work sounds fascinating," Jisung interjected smoothly, steering the conversation towards safer territory. "Perhaps we should discuss potential collaborations." Dong Hyun's attention shifted to Jisung, his expression professionally neutral, but with an edge of challenge. "That would be interesting. Your company's market position is impressive, though I've heard some of your recent innovations have been derivative." The implied criticism hung in the air like smoke. Hairin felt the tension between the two men build, wrapped in layers of professional courtesy, but sharp as razor wire underneath. She took a larger sip of champagne than strictly necessary, feeling the bubbles burn down her throat. The evening proceeded with the three of them locked in an elaborate dance of social obligations and business discussions, each interaction weighted with unspoken meanings. Other attendees, sensing the underlying drama, created a subtle buffer zone around them. As the event drew to a close, Dong-hyun handed Hae-rin his business card. "For professional purposes," he said, but his fingers lingered against hers during the exchange. Seoul's tech scene could benefit from some fresh perspectives in advertising. The ride home with Ji-sung was quietly tense. He drove their luxury sedan with precise movements, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Hae-rin stared out the window, watching the city lights blur together, acutely aware of the business card burning a hole in her clutch. "Do you want to tell me about him?" Ji-sung finally asked, his voice carefully controlled. Hae-rin continued watching the city pass by. "There's nothing to tell," she replied, but even to her own ears, the words sounded hollow. The autumn air grew colder as Dong-hyun waited outside Hae-rin's advertising agency. He had deliberately chosen this moment. Knowing her habits hadn't changed, she still worked late on Thursdays, just like during their university days. When she emerged from the building, their eyes met, and both recognized this conversation was inevitable. "We need to talk," he said simply, his breath visible in the evening air. They found themselves in a quiet coffee shop, far from both their usual business districts. The distance from their professional lives made the conversation feel more personal, more dangerous. Dong-hyun stirred his Americano. Black, no sugar, just as he always had it. "I made a mistake," he began, his voice carrying the weight of years of regret. "Choosing ambition over us. It wasn't worth it." His fingers tapped against the ceramic cup, a nervous habit she remembered from their past. "I've achieved everything I thought I wanted, but success feels hollow, without someone to share it with." Hae-rin stared into her own cup, watching the light reflect off the surface. "You can't just come back after 10 years and say these things," she responded, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'm married now. I have a life with Ji-sung." "Are you happy?" Dong-hyun asked, leaning forward. "Truly happy, not just content." The question lingered between them, uncomfortably accurate in its aim. Before Hae-rin could respond, her phone buzzed, a message from Ji-sung about working late again. Meanwhile, in his office overlooking Seoul's financial district, Ji-sung was indeed working late, but not for the reasons he'd told his wife. He sat in his executive chair, scrolling through article after article about Don Ji-hyun's success in Silicon Valley. Each piece painted the picture of a brilliant innovator, someone who had revolutionized AI implementation in Asian markets. The kind of success story that business magazines loved to feature. Ji-sung's assistant entered with another stack of reports. "Sir, I've gathered everything we have on potential competitors in the AI sector," she said, placing them on his desk, including personal background information on key players. He nodded, already reaching for the files. The more he read about Dong-hyun, the more he recognized a reflection of his younger self, ambitious, innovative, willing to take risks. But unlike Dong-hyun, Ji-sung had never had to choose between love and success. He'd found Hae-rin after establishing his empire, when he could offer her stability and luxury. The next day, Hae-rin met with her closest friends for lunch. Min-ah, a professor who had known her since university, and Soo-jin, a fellow advertising executive who had witnessed her relationship with Ji-sung from the beginning. "He still has that effect on you," Min-ah observed, watching Hae-rin push her food around the plate. "I saw how you looked at each other at the tech summit." Soo-jin set down her wine glass firmly. "Don't encourage this," she warned. "Ji-sung is everything a woman could want, successful, stable, devoted. Why risk that for old memories?" "Because some memories never really become old," Min-ah countered. "They stay fresh, keep us wondering about what could have been." Hae-rin listened to her friends debate her life, feeling increasingly disconnected from both perspectives. Neither understood the complexity of her emotions, how she could simultaneously love her present life while feeling drawn to the passion of her past. "Ji-sung loves you," Soo-jin pressed on. "He's built his whole world around making you happy." "And that's exactly the problem," Min-ah interrupted. "He's created a perfect cage, gilded with luxury and comfort. But is that what Hae-rin really wants?" The debate grew heated, voices rising slightly above the restaurant's ambient noise. Haerin watched her friends argue about her life choices, seeing how their own experiences colored their perspectives. Minna, who had chosen passion over stability in her own life, championed the heart's desires. Sujin, having witnessed too many failed relationships, advocated for security and certainty. Their argument was interrupted by another message from Jisung, a reminder about an upcoming charity gala where they would be expected to present a united front. The irony wasn't lost on Haerin. While her friends debated her happiness, her husband was planning their next public appearance, maintaining the image of perfect marriage. Later that evening, when Haerin returned home, she found Jisung waiting in their living room, his laptop open to articles about Donghyun's company. The sight stopped her in her tracks, the physical manifestation of her past and present colliding. "I've been researching potential partnerships," Jisung said, his tone carefully neutral. "Your friend's company shows promise." The word friend carried a weight that filled the room. Haerin set down her bag, feeling the tension build. "He's not just a friend," she admitted finally. "You deserve to know that." The truth hung between them like a delicate glass sculpture, beautiful but dangerous if mishandled. Jisung closed his laptop slowly, processing her words with the same careful consideration he gave to major business decisions. "I know," he replied softly. "I've always known there was someone before me. I just never expected to have to compete with a ghost." The conference room at Seoul's Grand Plaza Hotel radiated tension as Jisung and Donghyun sat across from each other during the quarterly tech industry meeting. Other CEOs and executives filled the room, but the focus inevitably gravitated toward these two figures, both representing different approaches to innovation in the Asian market. Jisung maintained his composed exterior, developed over years of high-stakes negotiations. He watched as Donghyun presented his company's latest AI developments, noting how the younger entrepreneur commanded attention effortlessly. The presentation progressed smoothly until Donghyun reached a slide that made Jisung's jaw tighten imperceptibly. "As you can see," Donghyun explained, gesturing to the complex diagram on screen, "our approach to integrating AI with existing infrastructure differs significantly from current market solutions." His eyes locked with Jisung's. "Some companies prefer to build upon established frameworks, while we believe in complete innovation from the ground up." The implied criticism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Jisung's company had recently launched a similar project, though using a more conventional approach. The whispers among industry insiders about similarities between the two companies' directions now took on a different meaning. When it was Jisung's turn to present, he opened with what appeared to be a routine market analysis. However, as he delved deeper into his company's latest project, Donghyun's expression darkened. The implementation strategy Jisung outlined bore a striking resemblance to concepts Donghyun had developed during their university days, ideas he'd shared enthusiastically with Haerin during late-night conversations at their favorite cafe. "Our approach," Jisung stated, his voice carrying authority, "combines proven methodologies with innovative solutions." He clicked to the next slide, revealing a framework that made Donghyun sit straighter in his chair. "We believe in building upon successful foundations rather than reinventing the wheel." The tension in the room became palpable as other executives recognized the growing rivalry between these two industry leaders. What had started as a standard business meeting had evolved into something more personal, with each man subtly challenging the other's integrity and innovation. During the break, Donghyun approached Jisung near the coffee station. "Interesting presentation," he said, his voice low enough for only Jisung to hear. "Some of those concepts seem familiar. I wonder where you got the inspiration." Jisung met his gaze steadily. "Good ideas often emerge simultaneously in different places," he replied, stirring his coffee with deliberate movements. "Though some of us choose to develop them responsibly, while others abandon them for greener pastures." The double meaning in his words hung heavy in the air. Both men understood they weren't just talking about business anymore. Their professional rivalry had become entangled with personal history, making every interaction charged with unspoken accusations. Haerin, who attended the meeting as part of her agency's representation, watched the exchange from across the room. She recognized the subtle signs of conflict brewing between these two powerful men, signs that others might miss, but were glaringly obvious to someone who knew them both intimately. The meeting concluded with superficial pleasantries masking deeper antagonisms. As executives filed out, discussions already began about the implications of this apparent rivalry between two of Seoul's most influential tech companies. But beneath the business concerns lay a more personal conflict, two men competing not just for market share, but for something far more valuable. That evening, as Hae-rin reviewed her notes from the meeting, she found herself unable to focus. The image of Ji-sung and Dong-hyun's barely contained hostility kept interrupting her thoughts. She understood that she had become the catalyst for a competition that extended far beyond personal feelings. It had evolved into a battle of business philosophies, innovation approaches, and corporate legacies. Her phone buzzed with messages from both men, Ji-sung asking about dinner plans, Dong-hyun requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaboration between their companies. The parallel notifications felt like a physical representation of her current dilemma, past and present demanding her attention simultaneously, each pulling her in opposite directions. The weight of being the nexus point between these two powerful men, each fighting their own version of the same battle, pressed down on her. She realized that her choice wouldn't just affect their personal lives anymore. It had the potential to reshape the entire tech landscape in Seoul. The pressure began mounting at home even before Hae-rin's mother arrived for their weekly dinner. The apartment, usually a haven of modern tranquility, felt stifling as Hae-rin tried to focus on work documents spread across her home office desk. Her mother's arrival brought the distinct scent of homemade kimchi and unspoken expectations. Ji-sung called me yesterday, her mother announced while arranging banchan on the dining table. The casual mention of her son-in-law's name carried weight. "He's worried about you. Says you've been distant lately." She paused, studying her daughter's reaction. "He's such a thoughtful man, calling to check on your mother." Hae-rin continued setting the table, maintaining practice movements. "He shouldn't have bothered you with that. Work has been demanding lately." "Work?" Her mother's tone sharpened slightly. "Or is it that young man who's returned from America? People talk, you know. Mrs. Park saw you with him at that coffee shop near your office." The chopsticks in Hae-rin's hand clattered against the table. News traveled fast in their social circles, where reputation and appearances held paramount importance. Her mother had always been plugged into these networks, treating gossip as a vital source of social intelligence. "He's a potential client, Mother. Nothing more." Her mother's response came with the weight of years of traditional values. "You have everything with Ji-sung: stability, respect, a beautiful home. Don't let old memories destroy what you've built. Remember what happened to your cousin Soo-young when she left her husband? The scandal nearly ruined both families." The conversation shifted to family obligations, upcoming social events, and subtle reminders of Ji-sung's position in their community. Each topic served as a carefully placed brick, building a wall of expectations around Hae-rin. Later that evening, after her mother left, Hae-rin found herself alone with her thoughts until Ji-sung returned from work. He looked tired, his usual pristine appearance showing signs of strain. Without preamble, she spoke the words that had been building all day. "I need to tell you something," she began, watching his expression carefully. "About Dong-hyun, about my past, about everything." Ji-sung loosened his tie and sat down, giving her his full attention. For the next hour, Hae-rin shared the story of her first love, the dreams they had shared, and the painful way it had ended. She explained the complexity of seeing him again, the confusion it stirred up, and her struggle to reconcile past and present. Ji-sung listened without interruption, his face maintaining the same careful neutrality he showed during difficult business negotiations. When she finished, he stood and walked to their floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city lights. "I'll support whatever you need to work through this," he said finally, his voice steady but strained. "But I won't compete with a memory, Hae-rin. I need to know if what we have is real, or if I've just been a comfortable alternative." The raw honesty in his voice stripped away the corporate veneer, revealing the vulnerability beneath. This wasn't a confident CEO speaking, but a man facing the possibility of losing something precious. Hae-rin moved to stand beside him, both of them looking out at the city that had shaped their lives. "I don't know," she admitted, the truth feeling both liberating and terrifying. "I need time to figure this out." Ji-sung turned to face her, his expression softening. "Then take the time. But remember, what we've built together isn't just about us anymore. Our families, our companies, our employees, they all depend on the stability we've created." The weight of those words settled around them like a heavy cloak. Their marriage had grown beyond a personal relationship into a cornerstone of their social and professional lives. Any change would create ripples affecting countless others. As they stood there, the city lights reflecting off the window glass, Haerin felt the full magnitude of her situation. She wasn't just choosing between two men or two versions of love. She was choosing between two different lives, two different futures, and two different versions of herself. The modern glass office building housed both opportunity and danger as Haerin considered Dong-hyun's project proposal. His company needed an advertising strategy for their new AI platform launch, and he had specifically requested her agency's involvement. The project documentation lay spread across her desk, each page representing another thread connecting their past to their present. Dong-hyun sat across from her, his presence filling her office with an energy that made focusing on professional matters challenging. "This could be revolutionary," he explained, pointing to the project specifications. "We're not just selling a product. We're introducing a new way of thinking about artificial intelligence. Your understanding of both traditional and modern markets makes you perfect for this." The proposal itself was brilliant, a fusion of cutting-edge technology with practical applications that could reshape multiple industries. Working together would mean regular meetings, shared deadlines, and inevitable moments alone. Haerin understood the dangerous territory they were entering. "The project timeline spans 6 months," she noted, maintaining a professional tone while her inner thoughts churned. "That's a significant commitment. 6 months to create something extraordinary." Dong-hyun responded, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that spoke of more than just business potential. "Like old times, when we used to brainstorm until dawn." Those late-night sessions in university came flooding back, the excitement of shared creativity, the way their ideas seemed to build upon each other naturally, the electric feeling of being in perfect sync with another person's thought process. The memory carried both warmth and warning. As they worked through the initial planning stages, their old rhythm returned effortlessly. Ideas flowed between them as if the decade-long gap had never existed. Haerin found herself experiencing a familiar creative high, one that had been absent from her recent work despite her professional success. However, the nostalgia carried complications. During one late afternoon session, as they reviewed marketing concepts, Dong-hyun's hand brushed against hers while reaching for a document. The brief contact sent a jolt through her system that had nothing to do with professional collaboration. "Remember how we used to solve problems?" he asked softly, his voice carrying layers of meaning. No barriers, no corporate politics, just pure creativity and passion. The comparison to her current life hung unspoken between them. Her work with Ji-sung's company, while successful, operated within careful boundaries and established protocols. The contrast highlighted everything she had gained in stability and everything she had sacrificed in spontaneity. Their collaborative sessions began drawing attention within both companies. Rumors circulated about the frequent meetings, the shared lunches, the evident chemistry between them. When Ji-sung heard about the project through corporate channels rather than from Haerin herself, the carefully maintained balance shifted. His arrival at her office that evening carried the way. Tea of both personal and professional authority. The sight of Dong-hyun and Haerin surrounded by project materials, clearly comfortable in each other's presence, caused something to snap in Ji-sung's usually controlled demeanor. "This is how you choose to handle things?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge she had never heard before. "Working closely with him without even discussing it with me?" The professional facade crumbled as personal tensions erupted. 3 powerful individuals, each representing different aspects of success and fulfillment, stood locked in a moment of confrontation that had been building since Dong-hyun's return. "You need to make a choice," Ji-sung continued, his words directed at Haerin but his eyes challenging Dong-hyun. "This isn't just about work anymore, and we all know it. You can't keep straddling both worlds without someone getting hurt. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy with implications for all their futures, personal and professional. Harren looked between these two men, each representing different versions of love, success, and fulfillment, knowing that any choice she made would irreversibly alter multiple lives. The evening air felt heavy as Harren walked through the upscale neighborhood where her friend Sujin lived. She had received multiple concerned messages from her friend throughout the week, each growing increasingly urgent. When she arrived at the trendy wine bar Sujin had chosen, she found her friend already waiting, an open bottle of expensive red wine between them. "You're making a mistake," Sujin began without preamble, pouring a generous glass for both of them. "I've watched you build your life with Ji-sung over the years. You've created something real, something stable. Now you're willing to risk it all for what? A man who left you once already." Harren traced the rim of her wine glass, considering her response carefully. "It's not that simple," she explained, her voice barely audible above the ambient jazz music. "Working with Dong Hyun again, it's reminded me of parts of myself I'd forgotten. The passion, the creativity, the feeling that anything is possible." Sujin leaned forward, her expression hardening. Passion fades, Harren. But stability, respect, and mutual understanding, those things last. Ji-sung gives you everything most women dream of. He supports your career, respects your independence, and genuinely loves you. But what if that's not enough? The words escaped before Harren could stop them. What if security and comfort aren't the same as happiness? The question hung between them like a challenge. Sujin's face reflected a mixture of concern and frustration. "Happiness? You want to talk about happiness? Let me tell you about reality." She reached for her phone, pulling up photos from their social circle. "Remember Minyoung? She chose passion over stability. Now she's divorced, struggling to maintain her lifestyle, and our entire social circle whispers about her choices." The conversation grew increasingly heated as Sujin presented example after example of women who had chosen unwisely. Each story carried the weight of social judgment, family expectations, and the complex web of relationships that define their world. "Your mother called me," Sujin revealed finally, her voice softening. "She's worried sick about you. We all are. This isn't just about your happiness anymore. It's about your family's reputation, your professional standing, everything you've worked so hard to build." Harren felt the walls closing in, the pressure of expectations squeezing the air from her lungs. "So I should just ignore my feelings? Pretend everything's perfect because it looks good on paper?" "No," Sujin countered, reaching for her friend's hand. "You should recognize that real love isn't about grand passion or dramatic gestures. It's about building a life together, supporting each other, growing together. What you have with Ji-sung is real love. Don't throw it away for a fantasy from your past." The argument escalated as both women defended their positions with increasing emotion. Sujin's words, though meant with love, felt like accusations. Each point she made about stability, social standing, and family obligations struck Harren like physical blows. Finally, Harren stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "None of you understand. You're all so busy telling me what I should want, what I should do, that you've never asked me what I actually need." She left the wine bar feeling more isolated than ever. The streets of Seoul, usually so familiar and comforting, now felt like a maze of expectations and judgments. Her phone buzzed continuously with messages from Sujin, but she couldn't bring herself to read them. The weight of her situation pressed down harder than ever. Every person in her life seemed to have an opinion about her choices, about what she should do, about who she should be. But amid all these voices, she could barely hear her own. The coastal city of Busan offered Harren an escape from Seoul's suffocating expectations. She had chosen this business conference deliberately, needing physical distance to gain emotional clarity. The ocean breeze carried a salt-tinged freshness that Seoul's metropolitan air lacked, and the rhythmic sound of waves provided a natural counterpoint to her turbulent thoughts. What she hadn't expected was to find Donghyun in the hotel lobby, his presence both a shock and an inevitability. He stood near the reception desk, casual in a way that Seoul rarely allowed, his surprise at seeing her genuine but tinged with something else, as if fate had orchestrated this moment. "Of all the conferences in all the cities," he said, a slight smile playing at his lips, "would you believe I'm here for the AI Development Summit?" The coincidence felt too perfect, too scripted. Yet as they found themselves sharing dinner at a quiet seafood restaurant overlooking the harbor, the distance from Seoul transformed their conversation. Away from the pressures of family, friends, and professional obligations, they could finally speak honestly. "I need to know the truth," Haerin began, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea. "Why did you really choose your career over us back then? Was Min-ji the only reason?" Donghyun's response came after a long pause, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon where fishing boats bobbed gently in the darkening water. "I was scared," he admitted. "Not a failure. I've never feared that. I was scared of the intensity of what we had. Everything with you felt so complete, so all-consuming. When Min-ji offered a path focused purely on ambition, it seemed safer somehow. Cleaner. Less complicated." The honesty of his confession hung between them, as tangible as the sea mist rolling in from the harbor. Haerin found herself sharing her own truths about her marriage to Ji-sung, about the comfort and security she'd chosen, about the parts of herself she'd carefully packed away in pursuit of a perfect life. "Do you regret it?" she asked, finally voicing the question that had haunted her for years. "Every day," he answered without hesitation. "But regret doesn't change the past. We're different people now. The question is whether those different people still fit together the way we once did." Their conversation continued late into the night, moving from the restaurant to a walk along the beach. They talked about their achievements, their disappointments, the paths not taken. Each word seemed to carry the weight of years of unspoken thoughts, of possibilities left unexplored. The professional boundaries that had constrained their interactions in Seoul dissolved in the face of honest conversation. They remembered their shared dreams from university, comparing them to the realities they'd built. Some dreams had been achieved, others abandoned, and some transformed into something entirely different. As they walked along the moonlit beach, Haerin felt the familiar pull of their connection, but it was different now, tempered by experience, complicated by their current lives. The passion remained, but it was no longer the all-consuming fire of youth. Instead, it had matured into something more nuanced, more complex. The revelation hit her with the force of the waves crashing against the shore. Her feelings for Donghyun weren't completely resolved, but neither were they the same as before. The image she'd carried of their perfect love had been just that, an image preserved in amber, unchanging while they had both grown and changed. This understanding brought both clarity and confusion. Her emotional response to Donghyun's presence was real, but was it love for him or love for who she had been when she was with him? The distinction felt crucial, yet impossible to determine. When they finally parted ways that evening, the guilt she felt wasn't just about spending time with Donghyun. It was about realizing that her current discontent might not be about either man at all. Perhaps it was about the parts of herself she'd sacrificed in pursuit of the life she thought she should want. Upon returning to Seoul, Haerin found the carefully maintained balance of her life had shifted irreversibly. The weight of her conversation with Donghyun in Busan pressed against her conscience as she entered the sleek apartment she shared with Ji-sung. She found him waiting, his posture rigid, holding a business tablet displaying photos from her Busan trip. "Social media makes the world very small," Ji-sung said quietly, his voice carrying none of its usual warmth. The screen showed candid shots of her and Donghyun walking along the beach, captured by conference attendees who had recognized them. "I thought you went there to clear your mind, not to meet him." The encounter that followed stripped away years of polite pretense. Ji-sung, normally so controlled, revealed the depth of his hurt and anger. "I've given you everything," he continued, his composure cracking. "A life most people dream of, support for your career, freedom to be yourself. Yet you seek him out at every opportunity." Heron knew this moment demanded absolute honesty. "The life you've given me is perfect," she acknowledged, "but perhaps that's the problem. It's so perfect that I've lost parts of myself trying to fit into it." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent news alert on both their phones. The business world had exploded with breaking news. Dong Hyun's company had just announced a major innovation that bore striking similarities to Ji-sung's company's confidential projects. The timing and nature of the announcement seemed deliberately calculated to create maximum impact. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Within hours, the business communities of Seoul buzzed with speculation about corporate espionage and betrayal. Ji-sung's company's stock prices began to fluctuate, and emergency board meetings were called. The professional and personal aspects of their lives collided spectacularly in the public eye. The confrontation reached its peak during an emergency technology summit hastily organized to address the controversy. In the grand conference room of Seoul's most prestigious hotel, Ji-sung and Dong Hyun faced each other before an audience of industry leaders, media representatives, and corporate stakeholders. "You used her," Ji-sung accused publicly, his voice carrying across the stunned room. "You came back not just for her, but to gain access to our corporate strategies." Dong Hyun's response was equally charged. "I came back for what was mine to begin with, both the technological concepts we developed in university and the relationship you built your perfect life upon." Heron, seated between their respective corporate teams, watched as years of professional rivalry and personal resentment erupted into public view. The two men she cared for most had transformed their private conflict into a public spectacle that threatened to destroy everything all three of them had built. The media seized upon the drama, turning their personal triangle into front-page news. Headlines screamed about corporate betrayal and romantic scandal, merging their private lives with business news in a way that left nowhere to hide. Family members called constantly, friends took sides, and professional associates watched with barely concealed interest as the drama unfolded. Standing in the midst of this storm, Heron realized that her personal crisis had grown far beyond her control. Her choices now affected not just her happiness, but the livelihoods of hundreds of employees, the stability of two major companies, and the reputations of everyone involved. The pressure to make a decision became overwhelming as both men demanded answers, not just about their personal relationships, but about where her loyalties truly lay in this corporate conflict. The lines between professional and personal had blurred beyond recognition, and Heron found herself at the center of a crisis that threatened to define not just her future, but the future of Seoul's entire tech industry. The tension reached its breaking point during an industry gala meant to celebrate innovation in Seoul's tech sector. The elegant venue, with its crystal chandeliers and perfectly arranged tables, provided an ironic backdrop for the upheaval about to unfold. Heron arrived separately from Ji-sung, her solitary entrance drawing whispers from the assembled crowd who had followed the unfolding drama in the press. The evening progressed with artificial pleasantries until Dong Hyun took the stage for his keynote speech. Instead of the expected discussion about technological advancement, he began with a personal revelation that silenced the room. "Innovation isn't just about creating something new," he started, his voice carrying across the hushed audience. "Sometimes it's about recognizing what we already have." He paused, his eyes finding Heron in the crowd. "I came back to Seoul thinking I could reclaim the past, but I've learned that some things aren't meant to be reclaimed." The audience stirred as Dong Hyun continued, revealing that he had recently reconnected with So-yeon, a friend from their university days who had supported him through his years in Silicon Valley. Their relationship had evolved from friendship to love, culminating in a private engagement. The announcement hit Heron like a physical blow, not from jealousy, but from the sudden clarity it provided. The reality she had been fighting against crystallized in that moment. She had been clinging to an idealized version of her past with Dong Hyun, using it as a shield against the uncertainties in her present life. The pain she felt wasn't from losing him again, but from losing the comfort of having somewhere else to place her doubts about her current life. Ji-sung, watching from across the room, recognized the shift in Heron's expression. He approached her table after Dong Hyun's speech, but instead of the confrontation everyone expected, he offered something unexpected. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, taking the seat beside her. "Maybe we've both been wrong. Me, trying to create a perfect life without asking if it's the life you want. You, looking backward instead of forward." His next words surprised her even more. "I'm planning to step down as CEO," he continued. "The company needs fresh leadership, and I need to remember who I am beyond my position. Would you consider starting over with me? Not as the perfect power couple everyone expects us to be, but as two people figuring out what we really want." The proposal wasn't just about their marriage. It represented a fundamental shift in how they approached their life together. Ji-sung's willingness to question his own choices opened a door Hae-rin hadn't realized was possible. The perfect life they had constructed had become a beautiful prison, and now they had the opportunity to build something real on their own terms. The evening ended with an unexpected sense of possibility. Dong-hyun's revelation had freed Hae-rin from the weight of what-ifs, while Ji-sung's proposal offered a path forward that didn't require perfection. The true resolution wasn't about choosing between two men or two versions of life. It was about choosing herself and the courage to reshape her existing life into something authentic. In the weeks that followed, Hae-rin and Ji-sung began the careful work of reconstructing their relationship. They moved from their luxury apartment to a smaller, cozier home where they could cook together and hear each other's thoughts without the pressure of maintaining appearances. Ji-sung explored interests beyond the corporate world, while Hae-rin rediscovered her passion for creative work without the burden of proving herself to others. The story concluded not with a dramatic choice between lovers, but with a more profound realization that true happiness often lies not in choosing between different paths, but in having the courage to forge a new one. Hae-rin learned that sometimes the hardest person to be honest with is yourself, and that real love isn't about perfect moments or passionate declarations. It's about the willingness to grow and change together. The end brought not just resolution but understanding. Sometimes the most significant love story isn't about choosing between two people, but about learning to love yourself enough to create the life you truly want.